Come on, you go first.
Hi folks. Hello, hi folks. I'm Ben, Technical Director of DataJar, also known as MacMule. Now we have Ellie.
I'm Ellie, Technical Account Manager at Dr. Logic. We're an Apple managed service provider.
And I'm Steve, Warneford-Bygrave, the guy with the obnoxiously long surname. I work for Move IT. We're a company that provide Apple-focused IT support for over 120 organisations. Welcome. I would just like to say that any opinions in this presentation don't represent our employers. It's kind of obligatory, and this is more of a kind of psychological talk than a technical one or anything else like that, and it's more about our personal experiences than it is about anything that might be, job related. So, in JNUC last year, I remember Ben and I were having a conversation about talks, and I'd always expressed an interest in doing them. Just always kind of wanted someone, but never really kind of had the thought about, what to speak about, or necessarily even the confidence to do it. But at the end of the day, it's definitely something that I wanted to do. I wanted to get up on stage and just have a conversation. But as I said, I couldn't think of anything. And as far as I was concerned, everybody knew more about something than I did. I had absolutely no idea what I could talk about with any kind of fervour. Just stuff, really. So I kind of never really felt like I could do anything like that. I thought, there are a couple of things that I enjoy messing around with. Like, I like this tool called Vagrant. But fundamentally, I didn't really know enough about it. I knew a little bit about setting up a Vagrant file, but nothing really about Vagrant networking. So, what's the point of me having a conversation about something that I don't really know? So I guess that's out of the question. So another technology that I was interested in, Docker, and I kind of thought maybe I could talk about that a little bit. I've set up a monkey environment with a distribution point. That's the giant guy and me coming out. And that was used in production, but now, that was like 2 years ago. So no, not really that either. What about Monkey? I could talk a little bit about Monkey. But then Greg's here. I don't know if he's in this audience right now, but what have I got to offer that Greg probably hasn't already offered, or anybody else that touches Monkey? So JNUC came and went, and I was pretty pensive about doing a talk. I didn't really know, as I said before, what I would talk about. Didn't really feel like I had anything to offer. Felt weird about the idea of standing up in front of a bunch of people and just talking about something where clearly, well, in my mind, people had more knowledge than I did. So after JNUC in November, I get a little email from Ben suggesting that we should do a talk together with Ellie. And it'd be my first talk, it'd be Ellie's first talk, and we're talking with someone that's quite prolific. It's an exciting idea with two of my favourite people in the community. But still, the question was what do we talk about? What can all three of us talk about that is we have some kind of common ground in? What do I actually know a lot about? And how could we collectively pool our knowledge and produce something entertaining, fulfilling, and that has value? I thought, I'm just going to stand here on stage. I'm going to let Ben talk about stuff, cat videos, and pictures of Ron Jeremy in Super Mario. That might work. But around the same time, I was hanging out in the Mac Admin podcast channel, and there was a bit of a conversation going on about imposter syndrome. And I was like, I kind of know that. I've kind of been there. I often don't feel like I'm good enough to do this or that or the other. And I'm watching and I'm reading the conversation, and Pepine, I can never pronounce his surname, he posts this. And I'm like, that's me all over. That's everything about me. As far as I'm concerned, what I know is minuscule in comparison to what I assume everybody else knows. And then I kind of started thinking, I know that I've had this conversation with Ellie before. We used to work together. And, we both identify as kind of feeling this way. And I kind of thought, I wonder if Ben has. I mean, Ben's the Mac Mule. He knows everything about everything, or at least I think he does. In reality, he doesn't. He does really. And we start to form this idea, let's have a conversation about this feeling, And I like talking about myself. So I'm completely okay with that. I've got an idea. So that, hence the title of this presentation, Do You Have What It Takes? It's a talk about imposter syndrome. So can I get a show of hands for anyone in this room that has ever felt like they're not good enough? I think that's actually the first time. That's most people.
That's
I think.
everyone, pretty much.
That's like out of every talk this week,
Yeah.
I think that's the most people. Congratulations for admitting that. Give yourself a round of applause. So I want to talk a little bit about the history of imposter syndrome. So the term imposter syndrome, or actually as it was coined back in 1978, was imposter phenomenon. It was coined that because it's, and for whatever reason, it's not in the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, which, you know, you guys will put your hands up, so I'm not saying that you're all crazy. If you search for imposter syndrome online, you just get a list of like self-help articles, and it's a long list. So clearly it's not just me that feels this. Clearly it's not just us that feel this. Clearly it's a lot of people that feel like frauds in the industry that they're in. That's just going to keep going back and forward. I can't type backwards. So a paper that was released in 2011 by a guy called Jarawan Sakwiku and James Alexander, they theorised that 70% of people at some point have had it in their lives. That's a lot of people. Out of the 200 attendees that came to Macaduk, that's 140 people, if I've done my maths correctly. I think I have. That's 140 people that experienced this. That's a lot of people. You know, even college professors and scientists and high-achieving academics feel this as well. I particularly love this XKCD slide. So as I mentioned, the phrase was coined in 1978 by clinical psychologists Pauline R. Clance and Suzanne A. Imes. The paper was originally called The Imposter Phenomenon in High-Achieving Women. It explored the reasons why this phenomenon was so prolific amongst women in high places at work and at college. So the original 1978 study sampled 95 undergraduates, 10 PhD faculty members in a small college in the Midwest in the States, 15 undergraduates, 20 graduates, and 10 faculty members at a large southern university, 6 medical students, and 22 professionals across all fields such as lawyers, teachers, and scientists. That's 178 women between the ages of 20 and 45. Fundamentally, they fit into two groups. So they were women who were praised profoundly as when they were growing up. So their parents would sit there and they'd say, you know, you're great. You're going to be able to do everything that you can do. You're just going to go out. You're going to succeed at everything. And then real life happens. And they realize that actually there's a lot of stuff that's stopping them. And, you know, they can't quite achieve the success that their parents think that they can. And it's through no fault of their own. It's just the fact that, you know, they're alive and they're in our society. And then you have the second group of women who were people who they had an older sibling or potentially even a younger sibling. And regardless of how good they were at what they were doing, the older sibling or younger sibling generally tended to get the praise. So they grow up kind of thinking this whole time that I have to overachieve in order to be recognized for the things that I want to be recognized for. There was an additional thesis written in 2011 that I've already referenced, called plainly the imposter phenomenon, where they note that the phenomenon wasn't exclusive to women, and actually it's a 50-50 split. And I think the biggest point about this is that they note that the phenomenon itself occurs if they fail to internalize their success. So there are two fundamental principles. The first one, and this is like people who don't experience imposter syndrome, which is an unexpected performance outcome. So like you're doing something and you have a really great success and it's kind of relatively unexpected. You attribute it to a stable cause, i.e. one that you can control, like ability. And secondly, the people that generally do feel imposter syndrome, it's the same, but they attribute that stuff to an unstable cause. And by unstable cause, I mean luck or effort. So they think, oh, you know, I was lucky. I played soccer this day and, you know, I scored a goal, but I scored a goal because the opposing team had a member of their team that were on the bench, or, you know, the goalkeeper wasn't looking, or a bird flew in the way and distracted someone. And effort is like a kind of temporary kind of, oh, I've got to get my head down and I've just got to focus on this because I'm not prepared enough. Something like that. So imposter syndrome itself is actually a cycle. It's completely cyclical and it's self-perpetuating just by the very virtue of the fact that it exists. You start off with an achievement-related task. That's up in the top left-hand corner. So you're partaking in a task that has a certain level of achievement after it. You start feeling anxious, you start worrying about it a little bit, and then you do one of two things. You either over-prepare or you procrastinate. I'm a procrastinator, so I only did most of this talk about 3 days ago. And then what happens is that you do it and you accomplish something and you feel absolutely great for it. You have a feeling of relief and you get positive feedback from people around you. But when you're getting that positive feedback, you can't help but discount it because you don't feel like you deserved it in the first place. And the cycle just continues. And it's perpetual. And yeah, perceived fraudulence, increased self-doubt, depression, anxiety. Yeah, standard, right? So, since imposters make unreasonably low assessments of their performance, and unreasonably is the key word there, the repetitions of success emphasize the discrepancy between their actual and ideal standards of success itself, as well as strengthen the feeling of being a fraud or imposter. So yeah, this cycle just continues until the end of time. Or does it? After you.
Thanks. Hi. So here's a zoo of imposters. This guy. And I just wanted to put this in because I think it's funny. I don't know if you can spot which is the real one, and which is the fake one. But yeah, here's some other words for imposter, these little pigeons. And here are some other people that have experienced this. So obviously everybody knows who that is, hopefully. Very successful, Meryl Streep. She's commented a lot that she's experienced that feeling of, you know, being very successful but not feeling successful at all, and like someone's gonna comment that, you know, she's not actually as good as she thinks she is. This is Maya Angelou, the author. She's written 11 books, and she's made a comment still that she's convinced someone will find her out, and that what she's done is not, you know, an achievement, that she's a fake in some way. Even this guy apparently experienced imposter syndrome and commented on it. Maybe it didn't have a name then when he was talking about it, but it seems like, you know, something that he's experienced. This is one person perhaps that maybe some of us wish did experience imposter syndrome. He's actually, there is an opposite to imposter syndrome. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. And it's a loose definition is this. The metacognitive inability of low ability persons to recognize their own ineptitude. Which, yeah, I'd say that's pretty accurate. So for me, when I'm thinking about like how this affects me, weirdly, I can kind of trace it back to something when I was at school, which is whenever people would ask you what you wanted to do when you were at school, I would always say, oh, you know, I want to be a vet. That was my thing that I decided I was going to go and do. And I was kind of under the impression, you know, interest and passion, that'll get you to go where you want to go, and you'll be able to achieve that and you'll be able to do it. And I believed that until I had a teacher who told me that I should stop studying what I was studying because I wasn't good enough at the science subjects, basically. And she said, you need to ditch it and do something else. And at that point, obviously, you know, when you're younger, you're at school, I listened to her because foolishly up until that point, I'd assumed that the passion and the interest for what I was doing would take me through. But, you know, this was a thing that then I fell into the career that I'm in now. Kind of, I guess, replaced looking after animals, looking after computers in a way. And this has all been about, for me, learning stuff myself, and it's been kind of accidental. And it's shown, you know, the opposite of what I believed then, which kicked off not necessarily crediting yourself, because I've managed to do it without necessarily having someone give me permission to do it, if that makes sense. So, yeah, there's this quote is quite apt. When you ask creative people how they did something, they feel a little guilty because they didn't really do it. They just saw something. It seemed obvious to them after a while. Basically, I think all anyone ever does really is connect the dots between things. I don't think that you necessarily have to have someone's permission to say that you're good at something. And if you want to pursue it, then you should. I don't think it comes down to you need to believe that you are good enough to do it. And I think that's something that we should all kind of try and do a bit more if this imposter syndrome thing, which seems to be pretty common, is affecting people like it is, you know. We should focus a bit more on giving ourselves credit. So yeah, here are some things. Number one, give yourself credit. Make sure that you internalize your successes. Like if you do something right, it's because you've done it, you know. Realize that nobody knows what they're doing either. This is a big thing for me, is that everyone's learning, and I don't think there's a point where anyone is ever really, you know, they know enough. You can never really say that. And also, being wrong sometimes doesn't make you an imposter. So I know I'm guilty of it. If I get something wrong when I'm trying to figure something out, you know, if it's a technical thing or something like that, and I am wrong about it, it doesn't necessarily mean that I shouldn't be in that space. I should still keep going and doing it, because people do get things wrong. It doesn't mean that you're a faker. And yeah, you should keep trying to do stuff like that, because it probably won't end up like this. And you'll probably end up feeling a bit more like this. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, go for it.
I mean, it's me actually, isn't it?
Is it?
Yeah, it is. So I have a thingy. So, back to me again. I did say earlier on I like talking about myself. So you're just going to have to put up with it. So I've felt like an imposter for as long as I can remember. And the way that I feel usually comes from one of two ideas. Either I'm too afraid to talk about something for the fear of being shamed by someone else, that's common, or I feel like I can't contribute anything of value. So I felt it for a long time, and I've drummed in loads of bands throughout the 2000s. I was in a myriad of them. We played loads of small gigs. And I always used to really hate not going on first. Because if I was going on second, I had to basically upstage the previous drummer. It was never about the bands. It was never about whether my band was better than the other one. It was always about my ability and whether or not I could perform better than I perceived the previous third person being. And it didn't matter whether they were better than me or not. I just kind of naturally assumed that everyone was. Like whether they'd been to music college, they'd had training, whatever. I just genuinely felt like everyone was always going to be better than me. And it always really bummed me out. Even when I came off stage and I was like, you know, that was an amazing show and everyone came over and they were like, oh, it was great. I was like, oh, you know, I haven't been to college, I haven't studied this, I don't kind of really know what I'm doing other than the fact that I've just practiced drums in my bedroom and I seem to have a bit of a natural rhythm. But I never really felt like I could internalise that. And I think looking back, that's when I first started to feel that there was nothing that I could contribute that somebody else already hadn't. And then came an experience at a place I used to work at that I'm not going to name. And it was my first IT job. And there was this guy on my team who wasn't the best inspiration. He used to kind of take great pleasure in, proving the fact that the people that he worked with didn't know what they thought that they knew. And he'd argue and, you know, it's my first IT job and I already feel pretty insecure about certain things. So like it kind of really affected me. It really, really bothered me. And by the end of that, I didn't want to speak up about things. I didn't feel like I had anything that I could say. I felt completely aware of the fact that I would feel shamed if I did, because that's genuinely what happened most of the time. Bearing in mind, I'm not saying he was like a nasty person. I'm just saying that the interaction between us didn't really work and didn't work for me. So that's when I feel like I started to silence myself through fear of being shamed. So yeah, I felt very inadequate. I feel like an imposter being up here on stage right now because like I haven't studied this extensively for years and years and years. I'm not a psychologist, but I really know what I'm talking about because of the fact that I feel it every day. And as you guys have said, like a lot of you put your hands up too. So it happens frequently. I'll be at a conference and I'll be sitting there listening to somebody else talk. And I had it earlier on today. And you know, people are talking about things. And I have a question that I genuinely want to ask that hasn't been addressed. But I won't put my hand up. Or I'll think about putting my hand up and I'll get really, really nervous. And I'll be like, oh, I'm not sure because what if I sound stupid? That's the response I feel like I'm going to get from a crowd of people. Because obviously I haven't understood what it is that they're talking about. There was a talk that I attended at JNUC last year where I went into this small low-key room and there were like 20 people sitting around listening to one guy talking about this product that they're releasing, that they're trying to sell. And throughout the entire talk, I've got this question that I really want to ask, and I'm not asking it because I'm too shy, even in a room full of 20 people. And it gets to the end of the talk, and I'm like, oh God, I really want to know the answer to this question. So I had a beer, and I kind of chilled out a little bit, and we went over and had a conversation afterwards. And I asked this guy the question, and he was like, do you know what? That's something that I haven't even thought about. And instantly I was like, well, that was obviously a valid question to ask this dude at some point. And I'm glad I've asked it now, because he's actually going to give me an answer that he's going to have to work out. So it was valid. And it made me feel good, you know? I was like, actually, do you know what? My brain was in the right place, and I hadn't missed something. Let's do that. It was a good question that no one had asked. So these two things that I come back to when I say that I'm too afraid to talk about something for fear of being shamed by someone else, or I feel like I can't contribute anything of value, they're rubbish, because it's all in my head. It's completely in my head. At the end of the day, if I've got a question, I should just ask it and not worry about what anyone's going to think of me, and not worry about whether or not I'm getting it wrong. So in order for me to combat that, my advice to myself, as well as anybody else, be brave, ask these questions. Put yourself out on a limb and let people know that you have something to offer. You know, step outside your comfort zone and talk. It was quite apt. I was on social media a little while ago, and I was kind of planning on writing this, which was maybe a month ago. And I saw this post by Kevin Smith. And you're going to have to excuse the swear word in there. I forgot to cover it up. But he says, Kevin Smith being the director of a bunch of really pretty good movies, insecurity is a fictional story that we tell ourselves about what we fear the world thinks of us. So since it's all made up, just tell yourself a better fictional story in which everything always works out okay. If you're going to make shit up anyway, you might as well be positive. I like that. That works. And it's very true. But I think fundamentally, in the last couple of years, since I've been doing the kind of work that I've been doing, the best thing that's helped me is you guys, is the community. I feel like I actually have an avenue to communicate with people now, talk to people and discuss things without feeling like I'm an idiot. And there have been occasions where I've said something that nobody else has thought about before. And there have been occasions where I've been wrong. But I'm never made to feel bad about that. And that's priceless, as far as I'm concerned. You're all my favourite guys on the planet, if that means anything to you.
So this is a bit of a difficult talk for me, actually. I'm good at talking about myself, but I'm not good at kind of really being introspective. And I'm good at self-promotion as well. Yeah, deja. I was trying to figure this one out, and I've mentioned it a few times on some of the private Slack channels that everyone's part of, got their own thing. And Ben, hello Ben, hello. Ben, I kind of said a bit bullishly, I don't think I've suffered from imposter syndrome. And Ben was like, you have to have suffered from imposter syndrome. And that's when I was starting to read into this and see, 70% of people do. Ben was quite right. I at some point, I must have. And I was trying to pull this apart and figure out when. And then I kind of found the definition of imposter syndrome. It's certain thoughts and things like this where you say, I must not fail. I feel like a fake. And I just got lucky. Yeah, again, these are repetitive things that you were seeing Ellie and Stephen saying as well. Well, to kind of tell you my little story. After school, I went to music college. I wanted to be a rock star, go on tour, meet loads of girls, all the rest of it. But it turns out I enjoyed the music tech stuff a lot more. And if you're here 2 years ago, I'm not that hot on the performance side either. So, it's kind of against me as well. But I just picked it up. I did some other jobs. I finished music college. I worked on Brownsea Island in Port Harbour as a barman. Then I worked as a waiter at a care home for a bit. While I was at music college, I was a security guard for a synagogue as well. So I've had some interesting jobs. And then I was offered a job doing dial-up support for NTL Freedom and VirginNet. Anybody remember those old ISPs? A couple of nods. And because I've been using Mac OS when it was like 9.2, 9.2.1, classic Mac OS, eMagic 4, Logic 4, Reason, when Reason just came out, and Rewire was like the bee's knees. And trying to use extensions to get the OS to load the smallest amount of RAM as you can, and then you realise you've broken firewire. That was kind of where I started. And I enjoyed that, got offered this job doing dial-up support. And fixing things, like if anybody else remembers those old connection settings and all that, and look at that, and try and do this over the phone. Yeah, that's kind of where I started off. I just got lucky. Okay, I just found I like the technical side. It seems to have stuck with me, and I got lucky that I went from music studios, from kind of college, the music studio stint I did for a bit. That didn't work so well, but actually then finding another IT job, the rest of it. I got lucky. I found my wife in the pub. I might have got drunk. That might have helped, but still, that's kind of my journey. And then so I kept on going through all this to figure this stuff out. Who can remember AFP 548 when it looked like this? Right? Yeah. I started to look at these things, and then I started feeling old. And I'm sorry if this makes you folks feel old as well. So, people here, Mac Troll, Max Home, Andrina, people that helped me out years ago. In fact, what I found was an old question of mine. Look at that. 11 years and 1 month ago. Now, my slides, I procrastinated, not as much as Stephen. I finished these 5 days ago. So this was fun. And that was me talking about how to bind Macs to a different container within AD. So that's kind of where I started, kind of from this thing of accidentally becoming an IT guy to being able to then ask questions in the community 11 years ago. And these are, this is quite a simple question, right? I think most people, or you start binding Macs to AD, this is quite an early on kind of question. I thought this was a good marker. Then there was Jamf, and who remembers the old green Jamf, right? This is quite a modern one from when I started using Jamf. I started using Jamf for version 5. And back then, Jamf had a mailing list. Jamf Nation itself was a mailing list. There was probably less people on that Jamf Nation mailing list than there are at this whole conference. So for me, it was just me asking a question in front of a group of people. But I'd been following the mailing list for months, and I wouldn't really pipe up. And then suddenly I got the confidence to answer a question. You answer one, the response is good, you don't get derided for it, even if you get corrected if you're wrong, but in a nice way. So that just carried on and carried on. And it got to the point where I started answering a lot of questions for people, so I started a blog. And again, I kind of dug up my old post. So there's so much wrong with this post. But, it's Quark 7, PowerPC, and I'm using Composer to snapshot Quark back in the days of 10.4. See, I really did make myself feel old with this. These are all things that you wouldn't be doing. It's kind of against best practice. And these are things that, like nowadays, if someone was talking about snapshot and things like that, I'd be running a mile, wouldn't be doing that. But again, this is the thing where this is the community kind of educate me and help me out there. Nobody really derided me for this. They just kind of, hey, maybe you don't want to do that. And again, like I said, my first blog post. So that was that post stage on Jamf Nation was in 2008, and this one here is in 2010. So a couple of years later, I was on that, like I said, on that mailing list, and I felt comfortable enough. And then I started blogging these answers rather than just constantly linking to my commands. And the first one is literally a short little. It says defaults write command is basically what it says. But that was my first foray into this, and feeling comfortable enough to be able to blog. Other resources I joined, I found my first post on Mac Enterprise being 2011. And hey, bot me for the OS X server. I must have joined around this time. I couldn't find the logs all the way back. But that's 2014. And then again, we've got Slack. And this is still a few days old, but we've probably 16,000 users roughly. So all the way through my career, I've been asking questions and answering questions on a public forum, and I've had people able to support me. I've also been on Ireland up until we come to data jar. I've never really worked with another Apple person, so I always had to go somewhere to ask these questions. And as we said before, Apple don't have like the kind of Microsoft TechNet articles and all the rest of it. They don't really have that great volume of documentation available to you. So I've kind of had to reach out. And sometimes that's been me watching what someone else has done and then clicking something with me and that, or just searching that being my exact answer. But there's certainly been a progression there, where at the beginning I must have I didn't feel like I could contribute. I didn't feel like I should be asking questions. I didn't feel like I should belong. So it's just this was all reminding me of this. Let me get to the kind of points again. I must not fail. We all fail. It's kind of more what happens afterwards. Basically, You know me by the trail of dead Macs I've left behind. It's yeah, VM technology is great. It's a lot less. It's a lot cheaper. But none of us explicitly knows what we're doing. If we tackled every problem like we knew we were doing, there wouldn't really be a problem. It would just be like, oh, it's just another command. There's always going to be something where you're not sure what's happening. We enter into this weird territory. And then you start to realise if you're the only person doing it, then you might literally be the only person doing that. And that could be a good thing. Again, feel like a fake. We're all in this together. We're all kind of doing the same job. And that's the great thing about the community. You'll post something, you'll blog something. And some of us in here, I can see, have been bloggers for a while now. Some of us got quite prolific open source projects. Some of us got a ridiculous number of gists where they put everything because they can't blog for some reason. And some of us are quite new to blogging, but they've been blogging quite recently, quite regularly as well. So, you know, there's other folks in here that we probably should converse with on Slack, etc. So, you know, I think you start to feel comfortable enough, and I think forums like Slack and that do help. So if you're not on there, you're not engaging, I would say try and just have a little conversation. It's very quick. You'll start to lose that. And I just got lucky. Could have phrased that better. Always. We all stumble over fixes. Some of us stumble when they stand up. But, you know, it's the thing. We all get lucky with this stuff. We don't, like I said, if we knew the answer to something, it wouldn't be a problem. We all get lucky in the resolution. And in that situation, that could actually be just chatting with your colleagues being your colleagues, your peers in the room with you on Slack. So yeah, there is a certain bit of that luckiness, but like I said, you know, we're in this together. Don't denounce it, and don't denounce yourself just because you stumbled over something. It's all anybody else does.
Nice. So I just want to quickly touch on a couple of things about feeling good, or, you know, overcoming imposter syndrome if you feel like you have it, which a lot of you guys have expressed that at some point you have. So there are 3 really good TED Talks. There's how your body language may shape who you are by someone called Amy Cuddy. That's really good. It's about, like, you know, physically empowering yourself by putting yourself in, changing your body language in a particular environment. And a couple of really good talks by a lady called Brené Brown on the feelings of vulnerability and shame. And I especially really like the second one, like the power of vulnerability. I can remember watching that a little while ago and feeling like something just went off in my head, and I was like, yeah, I get that, and it's weird. I'll watch it. I'm not going to explain it, and I haven't seen it in a while, but I would probably recommend. And obviously the links are up there. So this cycle that I'm talking about earlier on, the best ways to break it. If you have a question, never ever be afraid to ask it. It doesn't matter if you're asking how Monkey knows what to install next. Ask the question. Don't necessarily ask Greg, but ask the question. If you have an opinion, never be afraid to voice it, because everyone's opinion is valid. Every single person who is in the community has an opinion about something, and your opinion might change the output of, I don't know, a project going forward. If you need help, never be afraid to ask for it. I mean, I'm pretty sure in everyone's career, everyone that's here, and pretty much everyone in the world, at least at one point you've had to ask for help for something, and that has projected you in a way that, you know, changed the rest of your career. Engage in community discussions, which is really easy because we've got a really good community and we've got Slack. But as Ben said, and I think the most important one is never be afraid to fail. Because the best of us, even those that are most prolific in their, especially those that are most prolific in their contributions, they're not afraid. We are an outstanding community, and we root for one another, and we want each other to succeed. And the mere fact that this conference exists is proof of that fact. Yes, to the pub. That's it, guys. We've got some Q&A if you're up for it. That's called double fisting. Genuine.
Yeah. What a sentence to end the talk on.
Not that, no, please.
Any questions?
Any questions, or has anybody got an experience they want to share? Ben, over there.
Can I just say thank you?
You're welcome.
I think the best. Sorry. The best thing anybody ever told me, and it's become a meme all over the internet, is the first step to being good at something is to suck at something. And essentially, you've got to just start going down that path and do the thing, ask the question that you think is obvious, even if it's not obvious, or that you think is not obvious, even if it is. So ask questions. You'll get good responses.
And there's the other thing, the old adage where if you want to be, if you want someone to correct something, post it wrong on the internet or something along those lines. And I think as long as Slack's a good vehicle for that as well, as long as we correct in an appropriate manner. Tom, can you go long? Get Ben. Ben, all the way over there.
What is that?
Oh, watch this. Oh. God bless his dad.
Great way to end it.
So what I needed to do was just reveal how much of an imposter it's forward side.
Yeah, there you go.
Very well known.
Shout.
Okay, I was just going to say, I was talking to Joe before about how giving talks is a weird artificial experience, and it's difficult to get experience in it as well, because the only way to get experience in it is by standing up in front of a big room of people, and you can't just do that. You don't get that many occasions to do that. So, but I wonder, because we're all here about Apple stuff, and Apple are really pushing for augmented reality now. Whether it might be a good thing if you come into like an empty cinema with a VR headset on and see hundreds of people interested or not interested in the talk, and learn how to do this sort of thing, in an artificial environment. I think that'd be quite kind of cool.
Yeah, it'd be like the next generation of SingStar, but instead of like having some stuff on the screen that says that you can't sing very well, you've got hordes of people frowning at you. Yeah, and then to get out of it, you just take off a VR headset. Yeah, that's a really good idea. I like that.
Probably be less terrifying than this, though.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I imagine so. Anyone want to develop that? Anyone good at developing AR stuff?
Roman, you are.
This is a developer conference, guys. Come on. There is definitely a name in there.
Horror show, probably.
Anyone else?
Go along, Ben, go on.
Oh,
Not bad.
I just want to say, this is working, isn't it?
no, but we can hear you.
No, just, I want to say well done, especially to Ellie, because I know Ellie the most, and she's been teaching herself.
Yep.
So yeah, well done.
Well,
You didn't use our flag.
Thank you, guys. I think it's part time now, really, isn't it?